The story of pilot Major Dean Hammond Jr. retired is one of intellect, skill, bravery, determination, fortitude, patriotism, altruism, and honor. Born in San Diego, California, Dean was one of 3 children to Father Dean Sr. and Mother Frida. In 1952, the family moved to Everett, Washington. Their home was right in the flight path at Payne Field, where the early jet fighter planes flew overhead, and Dean's enthusiasm for aviation took off. In May 1968, Dean enlisted in the ARMY Infantry. He applied for officer candidate school and was commissioned in March 1969 as a second lieutenant. He applied and was accepted into flight school at Fort Stewart, Georgia, where he was an honor graduate, finishing in the top 5 of his class. Hammond's first aviation assignment was to pilot the O-1 Bird Dog with the 21st Reconnaissance Airplane Company, Chu Lai, Vietnam, arriving in October 1970. His missions sometimes involved flying right up to the DMZ, usually with an artillery observer in the rear seat. If enemy activity were observed, they would report it and would be engaged with artillery fire, helicopter gunships, or tactical air. On March 3, 1971, Dean had already flown one mission when a fellow pilot asked him to fly his mission for him. It would be a 2-aircraft flight to the Cam Duke area near the Laotian border, where there was an old abandoned American airfield. Dean was familiar with the location, as he had been watching the position for some months and believed there might be an underground enemy field hospital there. Dean thought the North Vietnamese Army was using the site at night. The helipad was always clean, even after storms that would have left it muddy. He wanted to have a look, so he, with his artillery observer in back, went in closer by flying under 1,000 feet and parallel to a runway near the helipad, with his wingman staying at a higher altitude. Just as Dean approached, he felt terrified and didn't know why. 3 seconds later, his whole world came crashing down. Dean had been right. The Viet Cong was using the base. A large group of North Vietnamese soldiers, armed with AK-47s, opened fire, concentrating on his small O-1 aircraft. It was more fire than he had ever been subjected to before. He applied full power and began to climb to escape the hail of bullets, but things did not improve. As they reached about 1,500 feet, a 51 caliber anti-aircraft gun started firing at him with deadly accuracy. The first round that hit his aircraft came through the right side of the door and hit the edge of Dean's seat. Another round entered and went through the seat and hit the back of Dean's right leg in the middle of his hamstring muscle. The impact caused his leg to explode, but it did miss the femoral artery. No longer in control of his leg, which was holding the rudder pedal, the plane snapped to the left and almost went inverted. Working through the shock of what was happening, he righted the plane and radioed his wingman that the plane had been hit and he was wounded. The observer in the back, who was not injured, assisted with the controls as Dean used his belt to hold the wound on his leg together and fly the plane at the same time. Soon they were joined by a support aircraft who heard the call that he had been hurt. The pilot, Bob Linenweber, a friend of Dean's, circled the damaged plane, checking its condition, and would help them return to base. Dean began to suffer tunnel vision and drowsiness, and Bob kept prompting him to check certain things like oil pressure and fuel. Now feeling the effects of his serious injury, it became increasingly difficult to concentrate on flying the plane. Dean needed to muster all of his strength as they approached the runway to use his ankle instead of his leg to move his foot on the rudder. With the support of Bob, who reminded Dean what to do, he was able to land the plane safely. A UH-1 helicopter, which had been following him after hearing the distress call, landed and flew him immediately to the 91st Evacuation Hospital. Upon arrival, the doctor noticed the hole in the helmet where the bullet went through and immediately ripped the shield off and removed the helmet. He was happy to see that the shot had missed Dean's head. Dean spent a month in Japan and then was sent back to Fort Benning. Dean received the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry with Palm. Dean recovered and served 12 years in the Army despite these devastating injuries. His commands included Commander of the Composite Aviation Company of the 35th Signal Brigade, Commander of Company C of the 1st Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division, as Chief Aviation of the United States Military Training Mission to Saudi Arabia. It was at this time he met and married his wife Mary, a teacher and speech pathologist. Dean's accomplishments did not end with his Army service. He became a successful businessman, having created numerous jobs in Lexington. With his extensive aviation experience, including 15 years of direct experience with the Kentucky Division of Air Transport, Capital City Airport Division, he has flown governors, cabinet secretaries, and commissioners during his 4 administrations and many missions for the marijuana eradication team. Aviation was integrated into his business operations, where he would travel to his computer installations throughout Kentucky. He has logged over 9,100 hours in 38 different makes and models of airplanes and helicopters, from a PT-17 Stearman biplane to a King Air 200, and from a Switzer 269 to a UH-1 Huey. Dean trained current and new pilots in airplanes and helicopters as a flight instructor, including part-time instructing at the EKU flight program. He is a 2019 inductee into the Kentucky Veterans Hall of Fame and was awarded the prestigious FAA Master Pilot Award in 2022. In 2020, he rented a Bell 47 helicopter for fun and invited his wife to have a ride. It was the first time Mary had ever been in a helicopter. It is therefore fitting that Major Dean Hammond Jr. retired as someone who has lived a life of intellect, skill, bravery, determination, fortitude, patriotism, altruism, and honor be enshrined into the Kentucky Aviation Hall of Fame.